Hey guys, it's Tom here, and today we have just kind of a casual video where I'm going to be talking about the new upgrades coming to the creation engine for Starfield and the Elder Scrolls 6, which are going to be kind of a big overhaul to what the current engine is for the previous games like Fallout 476, Skyrim, and with this overhaul they're apparently kind of upgrading things like the animation and stuff like that. And in this video, I'll just be giving my thoughts and what I hope they very much improve with this engine, and things that we will hopefully notice when Starfield finally gets some sort of gameplay, or the Elder Scrolls 6 in however many years that's going to be. So I think a really simple place to start with animation upgrades is talking about movement and kind of how that might be changed in these future games. So as Starfield is obviously their next game, we can assume that there's probably going to be some zero gravity sections, as it's going to be in space, possibly, or at least going to other planets, surely. You know, the name Starfield, and from the teaser we've seen, we can almost undoubtedly assume that. So we can also assume that this kind of animation change will probably relate to maybe areas when you're in zero gravity and you're kind of floating around in space. But this will also kind of mean that the generic walk and kind of jump that your characters do will probably have some form of change to look a bit more naturalistic. Because admittedly the jumping animation in current Bethesda games is a bit strange on occasion. And the movement does have a bit of a sort of weirdish look to it once you start to kind of really put your eyes on it. Nothing that I've really ever been too bothered by, but obviously for those who want perfect immersion, they might kind of get a bit too nitpicky on it. But I think another decent thing to talk about will be the combat, because Elder Scrolls games, for instance, and I guess Fallout as well, their combat hasn't ever been the most innovative, to say the least. Like, with Fallout, it's a bit easier because it's a shooter, mostly, so you can kind of plan for those long-range battles. But with stuff like Elder Scrolls, it is pretty much just a slash and smash. I guess if you play certain playstyles, like I like to play Sword and Shield, there are certain instances of playing it defensive and trying to throw in the occasional dodge roll if you have the perk for it. But hopefully, if there is, a significant upgrade to combat in these future games, maybe not for Starfield, but for Elder Scrolls 6, I would really appreciate some sort of kind of overhaul to combat, which works a bit more like, say, The Witcher 3 or Dark Souls, for instance, where we've got a dodge roll button. We have proper, blocking, and if you do it at the right time, you can almost parry, or if you block at the wrong time, you'll take a lot of damage and kind of damage your defenses and stuff. And as say, for instance, Fallout has its little VAT system and how you can get crippled in certain parts of the body. It would be nice to see these injuries in future games. Say with Starfield, for instance, if you take a laser bolt to the face, it could mess up with your vision for a bit or something like that. Or with those future Elder Scrolls games, if you take an arrow to the knee, you should actually get some sort of hampering to your walking speed. Now, I know that this level of immersion can annoy some people, as they're just here to play a game and they don't really care about that. But at least some form of sort of dodge button is something that I've always kind of really looked for in games, because it just makes combat a lot nicer almost. Hence the reason I usually run a shield, because I've got some form of defense. As the kind of dodge roll system that you can get in Skyrim, it doesn't feel like it was made for combat that well. More that was made for just a bit of cool aesthetic. And for slightly going off topic here about the engine, it would be really nice if they could bring in some more of the weapons that were kind of vanishing after Morrowind. Like maybe bring back throwing stars and throwing darts and spears. I'd really like to see spears again. And obviously if they do actually do some sort of animation upgrade, certain weapons might move in certain ways. So for instance, if you've got a spear, you might have a lot of lunging and kind of jabbing movements. While with a greatsword, you'll be slashing a lot more and kind of leaning your body into it. Of course, with this animation upgrade as well, you never know, it might also mean that we get certain different types of attacks. So instead of it being, say, for instance, in Skyrim, you just click or just tap on right trigger to do a light attack, you can hold it down to do a heavy. We might get something a bit like in For Honor, if any of you have played that, where you have attacking directions and stuff like that, which would be very interesting to see. But that high level of combat, I'd assume, is something that a lot of people would probably get put off by. I'm interested to know what you guys think of, obviously, so if you want to let me know in the comments, would you like a very kind of hardcore kind of combat style for Elder Scrolls 6? Or maybe for Starfield, would you like it so your kind of combat in a ship is really, really kind of interesting, where you're kind of having to control each part, and then when you land on somewhere, you have more like a Fallout 4 shooter kind of playstyle. But yeah, no, whatever you guys would prefer, let me know in the comments, because it does really interest me. But definitely weapons are something that I'm hoping to see some more of in future Bethesda titles, like more diverse weapons. But back onto Starfield though, and talking about this engine overhaul, because that's where we'll first get to see it properly in action. Something I'm sure everyone will be wanting to see is probably a bit better optimization and less bugs when the game comes out, because as we saw with Fallout 76, the engine is getting quite old, and the bugs are starting to kind of lean through more and more, and go from humour to just a bit disgraceful in some points. But I've got full faith in Bethesda that they'll do the right thing and make a really nice game, and then obviously lead into Elder Scrolls 6 and make another Elder Scrolls game for us to fall in love with. But yeah, let's talk some more about Starfield, because I've got a few more points to make about that, especially with the whole kind of spaceships and that side of things. As with an animation overhaul, we're not just talking about players, we're also talking about vehicles and animals in the wild, so maybe we could have spaceships which kind of have their thrusters shoot off more, and the kind of ship moves kind of how it's shaped and stuff and whatnot, which would be really interesting. And if they do decide to go for something which is very high epic sci-fi like we're expecting, we could see things where like rockets and satellites are shooting off into space and parts are falling off as they hit space, and having those bits kind of collide with us, and depending on where they hit, kind of leaving marks and scratches, or maybe even destroying parts of the ship. And with these kind of animation and motion changes, it means that the kind of engine will be ready for more diverse kind of damages, and kind of showing the effects of battles and stuff like that, which could be really, really interesting and really cool to see. While this could equate in Elder Scrolls for, say, your horses that you're trying to ride, maybe that you're charging into battle on a horse, which could become a more prevalent thing in the Elder Scrolls 6, actually leaning into horse combat, and, I don't know, your enemy dodges out of the way with their axe and cleaves off the front leg of your horse. Obviously that wouldn't instantly kill it, but it would pretty much make it drop to the ground and be unrideable. And if they could manage to get off things like that, the levels of immersion would be stuff that we wouldn't really see in current games, and would be a very big task for them to do, but would be incredibly cool if they could pull it off. The next point I want to get onto is dialogue and conversations, as when we look at much older games like Morrowind and Oblivion, and Fallout 3 as well, time would completely pause when you enter like dialogue, which is obviously a bit strange, a bit weird. Obviously it does mean that some interesting world interactions can't happen while that's going on, and almost does work for some kind of cutscenes. But with, say, Skyrim and Fallout 4, where they've leaned in more to the kind of side of the game still moves around you and whatnot, it would be nice if the characters' animations sort of reflected the conversation a bit more, and facial emotions especially, like you could actually see in a character's eyes and their face how they're feeling. And perhaps this could actually lean into some sort of more charismatic approaches in future games, where, say, for instance, you want to be a more dialogue-based character, and if they do get the animations spot on, and have facial animations which blatantly say this person's bullshitting or lying, they could do some very strange playstyles there, which are full-on influenced by how perceptive a player is at kind of analysing who they're looking at and how they move around. I know with the Dawnguard DLC in Skyrim that they tried to do a bit of this kind of extended animation in characters with Serana and Lord Harkon, because if you actually look back at the first time you interact with Lord Harkon and Serana together, the amount of animations they make while talking to you is actually kind of funny, as you notice Harkon pointing at you, Serana crossing her arms, leaning back, and the fact that almost no other NPC does this in the game, but they do, just makes it kind of amusing. But having it so everyone in your game has these animations and have these reactions depending on what you say and how your character makes them feel could be really nice for just another level of immersion and just quality to the game. But those are just some of my thoughts on how they could upgrade motion and animation in Elder Scrolls 6 and Starfield. I know I spent a lot of time in this video just talking about that whole kind of just animation really, but obviously the engine is going to have a lot more upgraded on it, and I'm curious what you guys would like to see upgraded in the Elder Scrolls 6 and Starfield, either one or both, whatever you guys want to talk about more, just let me know in the comments. I'll read them, and I haven't been that responsive to comments lately, I do apologise for that. I've just kind of been very much focused on doing other stuff outside of YouTube for a bit, so when I come back and look at the comments, I'm usually kind of just skim reading through them and almost forget to reply, but I will start getting back into replying. But anyway, I do hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have, liking and subscribing massively helps out the channel, and yeah, I just hope that I'll see you next time for whatever video that is.